Well, I want to welcome everyone here to Yosemite National Park and to the Yellow Pines Campground. My name is Shelton Johnson, and I've worked here as a park ranger. This is my 21st year, 21st season. And I wish I could tell you how thrilled I was when the buses pulled up and you guys were in sight, and how happy I am to see you now in front of me. This is a dream come true to see this many of our people in one place. And it's not a blue screen. It wasn't filmed in LA. They didn't add the trees. That you're really here. And I've been here in Yosemite since May of last year. Last time I saw this many colored people in one place was in Nebraska. And I saw them right before I enlisted in the United States Army. There ain't no quiet in this world as the silence of a battlefield when the last shot's been fired. And then he said, because you know what? It ain't quiet. You just pray to God that it is. And then you hear some man crying over there. You hear another one crying. There's a woman over there that's crying because she ain't got a child no more. And he said that all that he saw and all that he felt on that morning in his first battle in the Indian Wars was in this flute. He said this was the flute that old man was playing. And he took it as a souvenir. He didn't know. He said he didn't know he was in shock. But he took this. And here's the problem. He said that every time he put this to his lips and did this, it took him back to that morning. And then he looked right at me and he says, I'm looking at you, man. He said, there's some mornings in this world you don't want to see anymore. There's some mornings you don't want to feel anymore. The sun is a good thing when it comes up over the edge of the world, but sometimes it lights up too much. And there's things you don't want to see or hear. So I don't want this anymore, boy.
Really honoring the legacy of these men, these incredible soldiers who really shaped the future of national parks in this country. You see, back in those days, around in the late 1890s, early 1900s, there was no National Park Service. The Army was the one who was tasked with the charge of protecting national parks, most of which were only accessible to those who did visit them in the summertime. And there were a lot of folks that lived right around places like Yosemite and Sequoia Kings Canyon, a lot of ranchers, and so they would often bring their livestock into the park for grazing, and this was problematic. So that, among many other things, was one of the things that the Buffalo Soldiers did, was they protected the resources, they policed the parks, they built roads, they built trails. Some of those roads are still in use today, and so they really distinguished themselves as a unit, as units of the Army, in how well they took care of America's treasures. And so they did it so well that they really did it right up until the time when the government started transitioning to have an actual separate agency care for those parks. That was the National Park Service that came into being in 1916. So we're really honoring the legacy of those men, both as African Americans who 100 years ago, faced with many, many obstacles, still managed to really distinguish themselves and carve out a real sense of dignity at a time where dignity was in short supply for those of us who are African American.
I think it's important because of the history that was made in this place by those men. And it is a legacy that allows all of us to have access to our public lands and to places like national parks like Yosemite because of what they did here 100 years ago. And there's a sense sometimes among our people that we don't belong in these places and that nature and the outdoors are for other folks. It's the legacy of the Buffalo Soldiers and the work that they did here, the legacy that they established, that proves, in fact, that these aren't strange places to us. They're, in fact, home. And so it's not a question, really, of coming here for the first time, but returning home and embracing that legacy. It's so important.
So why should other people, outside of this community, care about the Buffalo Soldier story?
Because being informed citizens about the history of this country and the history of the world is a tide that raises all boats. And particularly as we're looking for ways to come together in a time where this country is more divided than any time since the Civil War, really. I think we need everything that we can get that brings us together as Americans. even if sometimes the story is a story that's got some dark elements to it. And the Buffalo Soldier story is not a perfect story, but it's our story and it's our history. And we had to fight for this country, and now it seems like we've got to fight to make sure that that legacy and that story is included in our history. So let's do that, and then let's welcome all Americans so that they can begin to take pride in the legacy of these men.